After cheating, my ex called me replaceable and said he was just settling. Reality hit when he saw he wasn't as wanted as he thought. Now he's scrambling to get me back. I've been sitting on this for a while, but I need to let it out. My boyfriend, well, ex-boyfriend now, let's call him Stanley. And I had been together for 2 years. He's 25. I'm 27. Female. When we first started dating, I thought he was perfect. Stanley's the kind of guy who'd turn heads anywhere. Drop-dead gorgeous, super confident, and always had that vibe like he was the center of attention. I was proud to call him mine. About a year ago, we decided to move in together. Well, technically, he moved into my house since I own it. Stanley's been finishing his degree and working part-time, so I've been the one paying all the bills. Rent, utilities, groceries, even his car insurance. I didn't mind at first. I saw it as an investment in our future. I figured I was helping him out so he could focus on his studies, and we'd build a life together. For a while, it felt like a dream. Stanley was sweet, funny, and full of energy. He made me feel like the luckiest girl in the world. I was pulling long hours at work, but it didn't bother me. I loved coming home to him, and he always had this way of lighting up the room. Well, in the beginning, at least. The first 6 months of living together were great. We spent our weekends exploring new places, binge-watching shows, and just enjoying each other's company. But then, slowly, things started changing. Stanley became more distant. It wasn't super obvious at first. Just little things. Like how he'd stop waiting for me to eat dinner. Or how he'd scroll on his phone instead of talking to me. Then, he started going out more. He'd tell me he was meeting friends. And I didn't think much of it. I mean, he's allowed to have his own life, right? But it started becoming a regular thing. Weekends, weeknights, random evenings. I'd get home from work expecting to spend time with him, only to find an empty house. When he did come home, he was either on his phone or heading straight to bed. No, how was your day? No hugs, nothing. I tried to bring it up once. I told him I felt like we weren't spending as much time together anymore, and he just brushed it off with a casual, "I just need some me time." You're overthinking it. Overthinking? I was putting so much effort into this relationship, trying to make things work. And somehow I was the one at fault for wanting to feel connected. It didn't sit right with me, but I didn't want to come across as clingy or controlling, so I let it go. Things only got worse. I'd wake up on Saturdays to find him already gone. He'd text me hours later saying he was hanging with the boys, or something vague like that. I stopped asking for details because it felt like every time I did he'd act like I was interrogating him. So I kept quiet, hoping it was just a phase and that things would go back to how they used to be. But honestly, it was starting to get to me. I felt like a roommate instead of his girlfriend. I was doing everything to make sure he was comfortable, paying all the bills, making sure he didn't have to stress about money, and he couldn't even bother to spend time with me. It wasn't even about the money. It was about the lack of effort. I remember this one night in particular. I came home after a 12-hour shift, exhausted. The house was dark. No sign of Stanley. I texted him, asking where he was, and he replied an hour later saying, "Just out. Don't wait up." That was it. No explanation or an apology. I sat there on the couch, staring at the message, and I felt this knot in my stomach. What was I even doing this for? I tried telling myself that he was just stressed with school, or that he needed some freedom. But deep down, I knew something was off. I started feeling like I was putting in all the effort while he was just taking it for granted. And the thing is, I loved Stanley. I really did. He wasn't just some boyfriend to me. He was someone I saw a future with. I wanted to believe that we were building something together. But the more time passed, the more I realized it felt like I was the only one building. He was just sitting on the sidelines, reaping the benefits. At this point, I started second-guessing everything. Was I being too nice? Was I enabling his behavior by doing too much? I didn't want to feel this way, but I couldn't help it. Every time I came home to an empty house or a distracted boyfriend, it felt like a slap in the face. Like I was giving him everything, and in return, I was getting the bare minimum. I talked to a couple of my friends about it, and they told me I needed to set boundaries. One of them even joked that I was basically his sugar mommy without the sugar. I laughed it off at the time, but it stung because it felt true. I didn't want to believe that Stanley was just using me, but the signs were starting to add up. At this point, I knew I needed to have a serious talk with him. I wanted to figure out if we were still on the same page, or if I was just fooling myself. I told myself I'd bring it up the next time we had a quiet moment together, if we ever had one again. That night, I asked myself if Stanley was really the person I thought he was. Or if I'd just been blinded by how much I wanted him to be. That question was stuck in my head the next few days. I was so caught up in figuring out how to bring it up without sounding like I was accusing him of something. I didn't want to come off as insecure or trolling. I just wanted answers. But Stanley beat me to it, in the worst way possible. One night, he actually stayed home for once. I thought, Finally, maybe we can have a normal evening together. We ordered takeout, sat on the couch, and started talking about random stuff. It felt nice, like old times, and for a second, I thought maybe things were turning around. At some point, the conversation shifted to relationships and loyalty. I don't even remember how we got there, but I mentioned how important it was to me to feel like we were on the same team. Stanley kind of laughed and gave me this look, like I just said something dumb. Then he hit me with it. You know, you're pretty replaceable. There are tons of girls who'd love to be with me. I swear I thought I misheard him at first. I literally blinked and asked, what? And he just repeated it, this time with a little smirk, like it was the funniest thing ever. Don't get so serious, he added. You know I'm joking? Except it didn't feel like a joke, not even close. I just stared at him for a moment trying to figure out if he realized how messed up that was to say, but he didn't. He just kept scrolling on his phone like he hadn't just shattered whatever was left of my confidence in this relationship I didn't want to blow up. So I kept calm. I asked, is that how you really feel? He rolled his eyes and said, oh my god, you're being so dramatic. Of course not, but like it's true, girls hit on me all the time. It's not my fault. You can't handle that. I was floored. Not only did he double down, but he made it seem like I was the problem for being upset about it. And the worst part? He didn't even apologize. He just acted like it was no big deal, like I was overreacting. The rest of the night was awkward. I didn't say much, and neither did he. He went to bed early, probably annoyed that I wasn't laughing along with him. Meanwhile, I sat there on the couch, replaying the whole thing in my head. I couldn't shake the feeling that he really believed what he said, that I was just another girl in a long line of options for him. The next day, I tried to act normal. I wanted to see if he'd bring it up, maybe apologize or at least acknowledge it. But nope. He acted like everything was fine. He even kissed me on the cheek before heading out to meet his friends, like nothing had happened. That's when it really hit me. He didn't care. At all. He didn't care how his words made me feel. And he definitely didn't care about how one-sided everything had become. I was just there. Convenient. Replaceable. I started noticing other things after that. Little comments he'd make about how other girls looked at him, or how his friends joked about him being the hot one in our relationship. I'd always brushed it off before, but now it felt different. It felt like he was testing me, seeing how much I'd let slide. The thing is, I never saw myself as the jealous type. I've always believed that if you trust your partner, there's no need to stress about stuff like that. But this wasn't about trust it was about respect. And Stanley didn't respect me, plain and simple. Over the next few days, I started pulling back. I stopped texting him during the day to check in. I stopped asking him how his classes were going, or if he needed anything. I figured, why bother? If he thought I was so replaceable, then what was the point of putting in all this effort? But at the same time, I wasn't ready to end things just yet. I kept telling myself that maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe he really was joking and I was just blowing it out of proportion. I mean, 2 years is a long time to throw away over one comment, right? I tried to convince myself of that. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just one comment. It was everything. The distance. The entitlement. The lack of effort. That comment was just the cherry on top of a cake that had been rotting for months. One night I was sitting in the living room scrolling through my phone. When Stanley walked in, he barely looked at me before heading straight to the bedroom. I called out to him. Hey, do you have a minute? I want to talk. He groaned like I just asked him to move a mountain. What? He said. I hesitated for a second, trying to find the right words. Do you even want to be in this relationship anymore? I asked. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. What kind of question is that? Of course I do. Why wouldn't I? I wanted to say, because you think I'm disposable. But instead, I just nodded and said, I don't know. I feel like we're not on the same page. He sighed and rolled his eyes. You're overthinking again. Can we not do this right now? I'm tired. That was it. He didn't even care enough to have the conversation. I watched him walk into the bedroom and close the door. And I realized I couldn't keep doing this. Something had to change, and soon. Because I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. But before I could even figure out how to deal with Stanley, life decided to deal with me first. A couple of days after our half-hearted conversation, I got a call from one of his friends. Let's call him Dominic. Now, Dominic and Stanley were close. Not best friends, but definitely tight enough that him calling me abruptly was unexpected. I almost didn't answer because, let's be real, what could Dominic possibly have to say to me? I picked up anyway. Hey, what's up? I asked, trying to sound casual, even though my stomach was already doing flips. Dominic didn't waste any time. Listen, I don't know if I should even be telling you this, but I feel like you deserve to know. He started. That's when I knew this wasn't going to be a friendly chat. I braced myself as he continued. Stanley's been seeing other people. Like not just one person, but multiple girls. And it's been going on for a while. For a solid 10 seconds, I just sat there in stunned silence, gripping my phone like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Are you sure? I finally managed to choke out. Dominic sighed, I'm sure. I didn't want to get involved, but we had a fight the other day, and some things came out. He's been bragging about it, like it's no big deal. He even called you his backup plan. Backup plan? I'd been putting everything I had into this relationship, and to Stanley, I was just his safety net. Someone to fall back on while he did whatever the hell he wanted. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, not accusing, but genuinely curious. Dominic hesitated for a moment. Honestly, because I think it's messed up. You're a good girl, and you don't deserve to be treated like this. I'd want someone to tell me if I were in your shoes. But now, I know how guys act when they have a fight together. Dominic and Stanley had a rocky history, even when they pretended to be friends. Dominic had always seemed a little too eager to criticize Stanley behind his back, and it wasn't hard to imagine he'd jump at an opportunity to tear him down. There was a chance he was exaggerating or even outright lying just to see Stanley crash and burn. Still, the timing made me uneasy. Stanley had been throwing up red flags for months, and this felt like the missing puzzle piece that tied it all together. I couldn't just dismiss it outright. I needed to figure out the truth on my own. Over the next few days, I started piecing things together without being obvious. I knew confronting Stanley without solid proof wouldn't get me anywhere. He'd deny everything or twist it around to make me the bad girl. So I decided to use his patterns and habits against him. One thing about Stanley was that he was a creature of routine, especially when it came to his nights out. He'd always say he was with his friends, but he was vague about details. No specifics on where they'd go or who he'd be with. So the next time he said he was heading out, I casually asked him which friend he was meeting. Oh, just Joshua, he replied quickly, barely looking at me as he grabbed his key. I waited about an hour, then I called Joshua, not to accuse or even hint at anything. I just played it cool. Hey Joshua, I said, keeping my tone friendly. Stanley said he was hanging out with you tonight. It seems his phone died. I can't reach him. I just wanted to double check if you know what time he'll be home. Joshua hesitated. There was a long pause, and then he said, he's not with me tonight. I haven't seen him in a while, actually. His voice sounded genuinely confused. That was my first confirmation. I didn't react on the phone. Oh, no worries. I said casually, covering my tracks. Maybe I misunderstood. Thanks anyway. I hung up and started thinking. If he wasn't with Joshua, who was he with? And more importantly, where was he? That's when I remembered that Stanley had a favorite hangout spot he never mentioned anymore. A low-key cafe bar he used to love when we first started dating. It was the kind of place where people went to have quiet conversations, not wild nights out. He hadn't brought it up in months, but I had a hunch it was still part of his routine. I drove over there, parking a few blocks away so he wouldn't spot my car. My heart was racing, though I tried to keep my thoughts in check. This was just a hunch, I told myself. A way to rule things out. Or so I hoped, as I approached the cafe bar. Part of me was still holding on to the slim hope that maybe Dominic had exaggerated, that maybe Stanley wasn't capable of what I was about to uncover. Sure enough, there he was, sitting at a table by the window, but not alone. My stomach dropped. He was laughing and leaning in close to some girl I'd never seen before. The way his eyes lit up, the casual way he touched her arm, the way she leaned toward him, it was all too intimate. They weren't just friends. I could feel the weight of betrayal settle in my chest, heavy and cold. Everything I had tried to ignore, to rationalize, suddenly became impossible to deny. I didn't storm in or cause a scene although I wanted to, but I stayed calm, even though my hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I took a picture from the sidewalk, just enough to document what I needed without drawing attention. As I snapped the photo, all I could feel was anger and humiliation and some sense of validation. All those doubts I'd been suppressing, all those red flags I tried to explain away, they were right there in front of me, staring back at me through the glass. He played me, plain and simple. Worse, he'd assumed I was too blind or too trusting to ever figure it out. But the truth was out now, and I wasn't about to let him get away with it. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't even angry, not at first. I was just done. There was no salvaging this, no fixing what had been broken. Stanley had made his choices, and now it was time for me to make mine to show him which one of us is replaceable. I didn't waste any time. The moment I decided I was done, I got to work. First, I canceled the auto pay for his car insurance. He had relied on me to handle it for months, but that ship had sailed. If he wanted the luxury of driving around town, he could figure out how to pay for it himself. Then I opened the fridge. It was stocked with the snacks he loved, specialty yogurts, his favorite drinks, the fancy cheese he insisted on, but never finished. All of it, gone. I wasn't going to keep catering to someone who had been laughing behind my back while he enjoyed the comfort I provided. Next, I told him straight up that he needed to start covering his share of the utilities. Water, electricity, internet, all of it. I wasn't running a free ride program anymore. He looked at me so confused when I brought it up, but I stayed calm. You're an adult, I told him. It's time you start acting like one. This wasn't about being petty. It was about drawing a line. I wasn't going to be his safety net anymore, and I wanted him to feel it. If he had been treating me like his backup plan this entire time, he was about to get a reality check. When Stanley noticed the changes, he didn't waste any time confronting me. He stormed into the living room one evening, clutching a letter from his insurance provider. Why didn't the insurance go through this month? He snapped, waving the paper like it was a declaration of war. I barely glanced up from my seat. Because I'm not paying for it anymore, I said simply. His eyes narrowed, his tone turning sharper. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're an adult, Stanley. You can figure it out, I replied, my voice steady and cold. I wanted him to feel the weight of his own actions without me having to spell it out. He wasn't done, of course. What's your problem lately? He fired back, his voice rising. You've been acting weird. And now this? Are you seriously trying to punish me for something? I couldn't help but let out a short, bitter laugh. The irony of his accusation was almost comical. Punish you? I said, locking eyes with him. Stanley, you've been running around behind my back while I've been holding everything down. Do you really think I wouldn't find out? The color draining from his cheeks. For a moment, he looked like he might deny it, but then he straightened up, folding his arms defensively. Who told you that? He asked, his tone sharp but betraying a hint of panic. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my voice even. No one told me. I saw you. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out my phone, opened the photo I'd taken at the cafe. There he was, sitting with some girl, laughing like they were the happiest couple in the world. Recognize this? I asked, my tone cutting through the silence like a knife. I didn't give him a chance to spin a lie. So tell me, Stanley, I continued, my voice unwavering. How many other girls who've been hitting on you are you dating now? Because clearly, you've moved on while still living under my roof. His defensiveness quickly turned into rage. You don't understand. I deserve attention. You've been so busy with work that I felt like I wasn't even in a relationship anymore. I stood up, my eyes narrowing as I looked down at him. You made a mistake, Stanley, I said. You took me for granted. You thought I'd stick around no matter how little you respected me. But let me make one thing clear. I'm not your safety net. You lost at the moment you decided I was replaceable. He glared at me, his voice rising as he shouted, You're being dramatic. Every guy gets hit on. It doesn't mean anything. Maybe if you'd paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have felt the need to go out so much. His words were like gasoline on a fire. Don't put this on me, I said coldly. You had a choice. You could have talked to me. Instead, you decided to cheat on me. That's on you, not me. Stanley's face crumpled, but I didn't let up. You wanted to know what my problem is? It's you, Stanley. And now, I'm done. He started to speak, but I cut him off. Cut the crap and pack your things and find somewhere else to stay. This isn't your home anymore. The words hung in the air for a moment, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. He was trying to figure out how to spin this, how to manipulate the situation in his favor. But for once, I wasn't giving him the chance. You can't just kick me out, Stanley cried, his voice shaking as tears streamed down his face. I don't have anywhere to go. Please don't do this. I'll fix things, I promise. I locked eyes with him as he stood there, trembling. Stanley, I said, my tone steady. I've worked hard to build a stable life for us. Tuners out, you don't deserve it. Remember what you said? That there were plenty of girls who'd love to be with you? Well, maybe it's time you find one of them, because I'm done. His tears turned into full-on sobbing as he dropped to his knees. I didn't mean it, he wailed, clutching at his chest. I wasn't thinking, I was just joking. Please don't throw me out. I'll change, I'll do anything. I shook my head, my voice unwavering. You made your choices, Stanley. You disrespected me, lied to me, and treated me like an option. Now you're dealing with the consequences of that. It's not my job to save you anymore. For a moment, I saw his desperation turn to anger. You'll regret this, he spat, rising shakily to his feet. You'll regret losing a guy like me. You'll never find anyone better. I couldn't help it. I laughed, a short, sharp laugh that made him flinch. Better than you? Stanley, you're replaceable. You've proven that. Goodbye. He stood there, stunned, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to say more, but no words came out. Finally, he grabbed his things and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. As the silence settled over the house, I felt no regret, no second-guessing, just relief. I wasn't going to let him guilt or arrogance hold me back any longer. In the days that followed, I felt a strange mix of emotions. How could I have let it get this far? How had I not seen the signs sooner? But of course, Stanley wasn't going to let things end quietly. Within days, I started hearing from mutual friends. Apparently, he'd been telling everyone that I was controlling and emotionally abusive. He claimed I had kicked him out for no reason, and that I'd never let him have any freedom. I couldn't believe it. He was rewriting the entire relationship, making himself out to be the victim while painting me as some kind of monster. At first, it pissed me off. I wanted to defend myself, to set the record straight. But then I realized something. The people who truly knew me wouldn't buy his lies. They'd seen how much I had done for him and how one-sided our relationship had become. Anyone who believed him wasn't someone I needed in my life anyway. A few weeks later, I ran into a mutual friend at a coffee shop who had some news about Stanley. Apparently, he had moved on and started dating some rich girl. At first, I just shrugged it off. It wasn't my business anymore. But then the friend smirked and added, "Well, it didn't last 2 weeks. Turns out she dumped him as soon as she found out he'd been living with you rent-free and you were paying for his school tuition." Guess she wasn't thrilled about being his next ATM. I couldn't help but chuckle. Classic Stanley, always looking for an upgrade thinking he's irreplaceable. Honestly, I didn't feel bad for him. He made his choices, and now he was dealing with the consequences. Now the only thing on my mind is hoping he wouldn't try to come crawling back, bringing more trouble into my life. Thanks for reading, everyone. If anything new happens, I'll let you know. But for now, I'm just happy to leave this chapter behind. Onwards and upward. Final update. Hey, folks. I thought I'd give you all an update on how things have been since Stanley left. Here's the thing Stanley never realized. He thought he was the prize, but he wasn't. A month after he left, I started seeing someone else. Someone who actually treated me with respect and kindness. Let's call him Cameron. Cameron was everything Stanley wasn't. Supportive, thoughtful, and real. He didn't just take from me. He actually cared about giving back to the relationship. For the first time in a long time, I felt valued. Word got around fast, and it didn't take long for Stanley to find out. I don't know how he found out exactly. Maybe a mutual friend, maybe social media. But when he did, he lost it. According to a few people we both knew, he was completely devastated. Suddenly, the reality that I'd moved on while no one wanted him, he wasn't handling it well. At first, he tried subtle things after that girl dumped him, sending me random texts, asking to talk, and even showing up at places he knew I might be. I ignored all of it. I was over him, and Cameron deserved my full attention. But then, Stanley decided to escalate things in the most dramatic way possible. It all started one evening when I heard shouting outside my house. At first I thought it was just noise from the street, but then I recognized Stanley's voice. I walked to the door, opened it, and there he was, standing on the porch with 4 of his friends. They were all ganging up on me like I was a criminal. Their voices were loud, and their energy was chaotic. "You're unbelievable," one of his friends yelled, pointing at me like I was on trial. "You think you can just toss him aside like he's nothing? You're heartless," Stanley added, tears streaming down his face. He looked genuinely distraught, but I wasn't falling for it. "After everything we've been through, you're just done with me? Just like that?" I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms, calm, controlled, unmoved. "What do you want, Stanley?" I asked, keeping my tone firm and ignoring the comments flying from his entourage. His voice cracked as he spoke. "I came here to tell you something important, but you won't even talk to me. You just slammed the door on me, on us." His friends nodded, giving him moral support like they were his backup singers. One of them chimed in, "You don't even know what he's been dealing with. He deserves better than this." "Are you done?" I asked her, my voice steady, keeping my eyes locked on Stanley, because I'm not interested in theatrics. "If you have something to say, say it." Stanley's lip trembled as he looked at his friends for backup, then back at me. He finally blurted it out, "I lost my job and I'm being evicted tomorrow. I have nowhere else to go." The porch fell silent. His friends stared at me, clearly expecting some big reaction. But I didn't flinch. I just stood there, watching him, calm and collected. "Is that so?" I said finally, raising an eyebrow. "And you came here with your cheerleading squad to tell me this because..." He sniffled. "I didn't know how to tell you," he said. "I've been scared, and I don't know what to do." "All right," I said, nodding slowly. "Let's cut the drama. If you're being evicted, you'll have no problem proving it. Show me the notice. Some documentation. Something." His friends exchanged nervous glances before one of them jumped in. "He just found out. He hasn't had time to get the paperwork yet." "Are you that stupid?" I turned my gaze back to Stanley. "Is that true?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Because if it is, we'll handle it the right way. But if it's not true, and you're lying to me, this conversation ends now." For a split second, His face twisted with panic before he quickly tried to mask it. "Why can't you just trust me?" he asked, his voice rising. "After everything we've been through, why would I lie about something like this?" "I don't trust you because you've given me every reason not to," I replied, my voice cold but steady. "So, again, prove it. If you're telling the truth, we'll figure something out. But I'm not entertaining empty words." His friends started shouting again, throwing insults, but I tuned them out. My eyes stayed on Stanley, and it didn't take long for him to look away. That split second of hesitation told me everything I needed to know. The group eventually stormed off, cursing me under their breath and calling me every name they could think of. Stanley's performance, though convincing at first, had fallen apart. I didn't let it shake me, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't leave me uneasy. What if there was some truth to it? A few days later, the truth came out. Dominic, the same person who had tipped me off about Stanley's behavior, reached out again. He seemed to be following our breakup chaos. He assured me that Stanley hadn't lost his job at all, had made the whole eviction story up. Stanley had been spiraling since he found out I'd moved on, and the fake crisis was his last-ditch attempt to trap me into taking him back. Honestly, it wasn't shocking, just disgusting. I blocked Stanley on everything immediately. Whatever lies he was spreading or plans he had weren't my problem anymore. Meanwhile, I kept moving forward with Cameron, someone who actually valued me. Stanley thought he was irreplaceable, but he was the one who was easily replaced. As for him, he'd been couch surfing and had dropped out of school after his parents refused to support him. I didn't care anyways. He got what he deserved for taking everything he had for granted. That's all for today. Make sure to like, subscribe and comment your favorite part of the video.